This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome back, guys. Very good morning and good evening. So I have an EC2 instance, right? So let me logging into this EC2 instance to deploy a web server, and I'll talk about a few scenarios today. Okay. So this is again a brand new server. So I just need to logging into the server and start configuring the server as per the need, and in our case the need is configuring this as a web server, the Apache HTTP web server. Well, I'm just logging into the server. The username is EC2 hyphen user. Let me switch to the root. Well, so m install httpd. I'm installing the required packages using the m command. Let me clear the screen. Service httpd start. Okay, service httpd status. Let me clear the screen. Now let me take this IP address and let me try to access this web services. All right, I should able to see the web page. That means the web server is working fine, and now this is the time to deploy our custom website. Correct. And we know that the default document root folder for Apache HTTP web server is where www.html. That is where we need to deploy our HTML code that you will be getting it from the developer. Correct. So now tell me, guys, in the chart window, the code or the data that I wanted to serve to my end users through this website, can I consider that is something related to the business data or the customer data, something like that? So should I store this code and any other data that I'm showing to my users, right, in the root file system, or it's better or a best practice to keep this data into a separate file system, right? So I'm just trying to integrate few other concepts here as part of this deployment, right? So what is the best practice, guys? Should I store the data into the root file system, or should I store the data into a separate file system, right? So as we discussed about it, it's always good idea to keep the operating system data into a different file system, which is the root file system, and any data that is very specific to your business application can be put into a different file system. Correct. No, now the data in the sense what? The application code, the images, videos, files, whatever you wanted to show to the users through this website, right? That is now called as a data. The data that we are going to keep in this particular location should be in a different file system. Yesterday, when I have launched an EC2 instance, sorry, when I deployed an web server, I was able to access my website, but the data that I kept into this folder was stored into the root file system, right? Now, maybe I'll take the opportunity to take a new volume and let me store my data into the new file system rather keeping it into the same root file system. Correct. That's the best practice. So what I do is I'll just go and provision one more new volume for this instance to keep my application specific data. My EC2 server is in 1D availability zone, so I will be going to the volume section, create a volume. I'm just creating a volume with a GP2 type. Let me take a 5 GB volume, and let me create a volume in the 1D availability zone and create a volume. The volume that is created, now I need to attach this to my instance. Let me wait for some time until the volume is ready. Now let me attach the volume to my EC2 server. This is the EC2 instance ID that I wanted to pick up. Let it whatever the name that it is taking, not a problem. Attach a volume. Now let me go to the server. Let me verify, I got the volume xpdf. Obviously, right, first we need to run mkfs-t ext4/dev/xvdf to create a file system on this volume. Now I need to mount it. Okay. So I need to mount this volume in such a way that in that mount point I need to keep my data that I want. So now, right? So voice is still breaking, guys, or it is good now? Mm-hmm. Okay. If voice is still breaking, let me do something from my end. Give me a second, guys. I'm just doing the network switch. Well, now please do confirm, guys, if the network connectivity is fine. Great. Okay. So now I just need a command to mount it, right? So I'm just mounting my volume now. If any one of you know the command, you can put that into the chart window. Mount slash dev slash xvdf is the disk that I wanted to mount. And what will be the mount point, guys? The mount point is slash var slash www slash html. You see now the way how I'm mounting, right? I'm mounting this particular volume into a directory. The same concept what we discussed yesterday. The difference now is the directory location is different. Previously, I have used the directory as slash data or maybe slash mnt, something like that. Now my directory is in a different location. Not a problem. Both are same concepts, right? Now, whatever the data that I keep in this directory, that data will be get stored into this particular volume. That is how I'm going to segregate my operating system related data into a root file system, my application specific data into a different file system. But this location
Here
still
is
be the
one question.
same. Mhm,
This directory won't be available now in root. Yes, a copy of it.
mhm. Thanks for the question. Right. Any directory, okay, will be a child directory to your root file system, sorry, root directory, right? So you see, right, the HTML is the directory under the www, www is the directory under the var is the directory under the slash, right? As per the Linux architecture, any directory that you pick up in the Linux is definitely a child of the root directory, right? The only thing is I'm just bypassing the data store location. So any data that's stored in this directory, that will be stored into this volume. Any data that's stored outside of this directory somewhere else, that will be stored into the another volume. That means when I talk about the directory structure, it is always a root directory, right? And even the var www.html is the directory which is pointing to or linking to the root directory only. So when I'm talking, I mean to say when I'm working at a Linux level, I only worry about the directory paths. I don't worry about the the actual volumes which are mapped in the backend where the data is getting stored. This is only the mount process. Once the mount is completed, now I don't worry about the volume. I only care about the directory structure. Let's say now I wanted to go to var www.html. Now I can look into the data available in this location, and now you start working as like all of the directories available in the root only, right? So there is no way that the directories will be exist, right, outside of the root directory, which is the starting point to access your Linux directory structure, right? So that's how it works. Now you can see, right, the directory, this directory is mounted as a file system. So now any data that you keep will be redirected to a different volume in the backend. That is the different case now. Your configuration will never be vary. Okay. Now the way how you create a index.html file here, that is still be same. So let's say, sorry, this is my website. You see, I'm just still creating a file in the var.html only. There is no difference since yesterday. The only thing is in the backend, this file is now getting stored into a new volume that I just created. Yesterday, the file was created in the root file system. That will be the vary in the backend, but from the operational side, there is no difference. You are just working on this directory and just creating a no data in this. So now if I go to the browser and just try to access my website, we should be able to get my website. Let me take my IP address. I lost it. What happened, guys? My screen is frozen. Let me clear the screen. So let me take the IP address. It's there here. Oh, I just created a file in a different location. You see my PWD, it is in different location. So let me go to var www.html location. This is my present working directory. Now let me create a index.html file. Now this is my website, right? Now let me try to access this web application. I should able to see my thing. Well, this is great, but I'm sure you are not happy with this simple line of the website. Maybe you need a beautiful website as like a real time. So now I'm going to deploy a real time website, guys. Right? So how I can deploy the real time website? Can I develop the code myself? No, right? Obviously, I need to depend on the developer. Hey, developer, my web server is ready. Can you give me the code? It's the developer responsibility to write the code and give it to you, and it's your responsibility to take the code and put the code into the right location. In this Apache HTTP web server, when I say right location, this is the default document root folder where you need to keep the code, right? So now I don't want this default index.html file, right? So because I want to deploy the code that is being given by the developer, so let me remove this sample index.html file, right? Now let me ask the developer. The developer will give you the code. The developer might keep the code into the different location. As of now, I'm taking the code from the Bitbucket, guys, but what is this Bitbucket, how it works, I'll be discussing later. Today my goal is not to discuss about the Bitbucket. the goal is just to take the code given by the developer and show you that how the real website look like. Okay, so let's say the developer is saying that, hey, DevOps engineer, the code is available on so and so location. So I just need to take that code and put that into my that put that into my server. Okay, let's say there is a so this is where the code is available, guys. I have the index.html and I have few more other files as well here. Okay, so this is the entire code of a real-time website. So let me take this code. So don't worry how I'm taking this code to my server. This will be discussed later during the Git session. So as of now, the goal is just to show you, how we can uh, run a real websites, right? So currently I am in a slash root location. I think just to avoid the confusion, let me go for the slash location. So here I'm just installing one package called Git package. The Git package will allow me to download the code from the Bitbucket. This Git also will be covered a bit later. So I'm just running a git clone command to download the code. Now the code is downloaded. Okay, now the code is downloaded. You see, guys. So forget about the git clone command and the Bitbucket. Just think of like I have the code ready in my server. This code I need to deploy into where www.html. That is how the websites will be running, right? And later we'll discuss how come the code is came to the Bitbucket, why I need to run this command to get the code and all, right? So because the problem is if it is a single liner, right, I can just open the VA editor and I can add a code here itself, but it has lot of things, right? I cannot create all of them in this machine itself just like that. So that is the reason the code that is being developed by the developer, I'm just downloading it into my server. Currently this code in different location, right? So I just downloaded the code into different location, but the expectation is this code should be in the default document root folder. Let me copy that. Copy, right? I want to copy this code. Okay. Uh, dot slash star. Any all the data that is available in the project working directory, I want to copy to where www html location. Mhm. So let me do hyphen r flag recursively. Mhm. Let me give f flag where www html. Let me clean up the data over there. Now let me run the command. Okay, it's done. So the only problem is, right, the first time when I run this command, it copied some data. The directories are not copied because I have not done the recursive flag there. Now, when I give the recursive flag, the previously data has to be overwritten. That is where it is asking for the confirmation. So I just clean up the data and I just ran it one more time. Okay. By this time, you might have been got the familiarity about these commands if you have done the assessment that I have been given in the last week, right? So anyway, now if I go to where www html location, now if I look into the content inside the where www html, you see I got a index.html, I got a images folder where the images are located, and I got a few other dependencies as well. Obviously, right, the entire website code cannot be in a single file. The entire website code will be split into multiple files. and the developer know how to do the linking between them and how to extract the required images or videos that needs to be uh, showing to the users. And here the images is the folder where the images are kept in. You see guys, if I go to the images folder, these are all the images that are available, JPG, PNG, something like that. These images are the one which I am trying to show to my end users. The code know how to get these images and how to show these images to the end users guys, and that is how the developer has written a code. So just to repeat, the developer responsibility to write this entire code, and your responsibility only to take the code and put the code into the right location, make sure that your web services are running. Now I have deployed the code here. Let me go and start accessing my web application. So this is the one, right? Let me just refresh it. This is where you can see the website is loaded. Of course, now you go, right? I need not to access the web services through the AP. Even I can access this website through a domain name as well. The only thing is I need to just create a record in the Route 53, correct? So if I go to Route 53, right? If I go to the Route 53, I have the hosted zone already. We have seen scenarios, guys, how the DNS works. The domain might have been purchased from the AWS, the domain from maybe from the other domain registers, right? Possible, right? So, however, if I have a hosted zone in AWS level, I can control the resource records here. So let's say www.cloudcourse.com should be pointing to my EC2 server, right? So that is where I can do this IP address here. This is the A record because the name has to be resoluted into the IP. So let me save it. Now if I go to www.cloudcourse.com is the domain that I have configured for this web server. Now we should be able to access this real-time website, guys. Good to know. So now the the thing that we need to understand, right? In this website there are a number of images that you see, right? So there are a lot of content, there are a lot of images, right? There are a lot of options are there. We need not to focus on the beautification of the website. That is something the developer will take care. We are just trying to understand how the things are working here. So how this page should come is something is written in the index.html file in the HTML language, and what images should be displayed, that is written in the HTML language code, but the where these images are stored, this is something that we need to understand, guys. Okay, here I can see there are some sliders. If you still go down, there is a logo. If you still go down, there are some images are there. So from where these images are coming, that is something that we need to focus on, correct? So that is where if you go to the server, sorry, if you go to the server, in the server, the code is available in the index.html. Even if you do a cat, right, it has a lot of code. You see, there's a lot of HTML code is there. We don't need to worry about the code anyway, but right, the images are stored into the images folder. Okay, in the images folder I can see there are a number of images are available, and the code know how to pick up these images and showing these images to the end users. Good to know. So the point which I'm making now is when I have a real-time website running something like this, I may be showing the images, videos, maybe some PDF files. Maybe I wanted to give some files for download to the users where the users can just click on download the files. Correct. Based on the type of the business services that I'm offering to the users, your websites will be designed something like that. but in common, right? When I say data, the data could be a image, video, or files, correct? Now, so this particular website is called as a static website, guys. Why I'm calling this as a static website? Because the end user, as of now, me as a end user accessing this website, right? I can only consume the data here. I cannot upload any data back to the server, correct? Whatever the server is giving to me, I can just access the data here. I can just read the data, watch the data here, but I cannot add my own stuff back to the server. That means, what does it mean by I cannot upload or manipulate the data here? Maybe I cannot upload the data. Maybe I cannot register an account here, right? Maybe I cannot add a comment here. So that means I'm not able to add any data from my side. I can only see the data that is what is being given by the server. So that is where I'm calling it as a static website. But usually in real time, right, there will be a dynamic websites as well, correct? So maybe if I go to youtube.com as an example, uh, maybe my ivq.com down. Yeah, I think let me go for I think I need not to go somewhere else. Yeah, since we all know about those sites, right? Let's say if you go to youtube.com or facebook.com or Twitter, wherever, those are the dynamic sites, right? What does it mean? You can create an account in there. You can add a comment. You can upload an image. You can upload a video. That means the end users are capable to give the data back to the server. The server should be in a position to take your data and store it in somewhere, and that data will be propagated again as a service. Those are the dynamic websites. So now the problem that I'm trying to pick up here is, if you look into the present status, guys, where www.html is the different file system which is mounted on a new volume which is having the capacity of around 5 GB. That means in this file system I can store only maximum of 5 GB data. So of course it's not even 5 GB because there is some space which is used for internal purpose, but let me use 5 GB as a round figure, as my volume is 5 GB, right? Let's say in this file system I can keep only a 5 GB of data. As of now, what is the size of my code and the images, guys? How do I know? Du is the command to check the size of a directory, right? We can see as of now in this particular directory, the code, the images, and other data that I copied, this entire data, okay, this entire data is now consuming a 4.7 MB space. But if I'm adding more images, more videos, obviously it consumes more data, right? So tell me, guys, in the chat window now, how much data that I can keep in this particular file system. It is maximum of 5 GB in this case. So this is good in terms of the static websites, guys. Why? The static website, in the sense, whatever I copied in this location, the same thing is going to be served to my end user. No issue. The problem is with the dynamic website. Let's say assume that this is the dynamic website. Then the users are having the capability to start uploading the data. When the users are uploading the data as a image or a video, that data should be stored in the server, right? So that data come and store into this location under the respective folders as per the code language. Let's say if the users are uploading the images, those images come and store in this particular folder. That is where it is eating the space from this volume. Now let's say the users are started uploading some data from their end. What will be the issue now, guys, if the users are uploading some 10 GB of a video file, let's say? Do you think will it be a successful? No. The users are uploading a 10 GB size of a video file from the website, as that is a dynamic website, like the way how you are uploading a video to the YouTube, let's say. So the file has to be stored in the server on the specific locations, but the problem is the file system that I have created to store the data is capable to store only a 5 GB data. So when the user is uploading the data more than the provisioned capacity, then there will be a error from the user side that the file cannot be uploaded. Agree? So how do we fix these issues? Let's say, right, let's say the user is uploading the data more than the 5 GB size and it is not allowing to upload. Why? The backend file system is not capable to store the data. So obviously one solution is I need to increase this volume. Yes or no? As of now, this volume capacity is 5 GB and I need to increase the volume size to accommodate the the bigger size of the data that is keep on uploading by the end users. Of course, I can increase this volume size easily because this is the AWS provisioned volume. AWS allow me to resize the volumes easily. Okay. Even now, let's say if I go to the EC2, let's say this is the dynamic websites the where the users are keep on uploading the data. My volume is not capable to store the data in the server side, right? So probably I just think that okay, I think 5 GB is not enough. The users are uploading more videos. Let me go and resize the capacity. I can ask the AWS guys, hey AWS, can you resize this volume? Okay, and let me give the instructions here. So I want to modify this volume. Currently it is 5 GB. Let me make it as a 10 GB. So I'm just modifying the volume to the bigger size and modify the volume here. Once the volume is modified to the 10 GB, now you can see the volume size is 10 GB. Now if you go back to the server, if you run lsblk, you can see that the volume is now resized to the 10 GB capacity. So simple. If you look into your file system is still at a 5 GB capacity. Now the volume is at 10 GB capacity, but the file system is still using the old capacity 5 GB. So whenever you are done the resize of the resize of the volume at AWS console level, then you need to resize your file system as well. Why? The additional 5 GB volume capacity that is added should be formatted, that has to be included in the file system as well. So we can run a command called resize to fs. Okay, resize to fs /dev/xvdf. I'm sure this will work. So I'm just running resize to fs command on this file system. Okay, so let me give the volume name. Now you verify the df-h. You see guys, the file system now increased to the 10 GB capacity. So this is the procedure how you will be increasing the file system capacity. First we need to increase the the volume capacity from the AWS management console. Then you need to run the resize to fs command to increase the extra capacity, right? Formatted and updated to the file system. Now I am sure this file system is capable to store a 10 GB capacity, correct? Okay, this is great. I have the opportunity to modify the EBS volume. That is where it is called as a EBS volume, guys. EBS in the sense the elastic block store. That means the elastic in the sense what? It's easily can be expanded, correct? So these volumes can be expanded easily with the required sizes. Hence, it is called as a elastic block storage. This is great. Yeah. So as per the question that I get it in chart window, you cannot decrease the volume, guys. You can only increase the volume capacity. You cannot decrease the volume capacity. Why? Possibly the data might have been already stored in this, and if you try to decrease the capacity, it will give you the error. So AWS will not allow you to decrease the capacity of the volume, only it can be increased. This is great, guys. But the problem is, how do you know what is the exact capacity that you are needed for this volume to store the business data? If it is a static website, we have some estimation how much data that we are keeping into the file system to serve that data to the end user. But if it is a dynamic website, we don't have any estimation how much data will be coming in from the user side. Users are keep on uploading the data. We don't have any control on the estimation what will be the size required for this volume. So the biggest problem now is estimating the EBS volume size. Should I take the volume as a 5 GB or 10 GB or 100 GB? What will be the right capacity of the volume to store the data that is keep on uploading by the users from the website? Because this is the public website, the lakh number of people are accessing this website, and no, we don't have any control on that when the users are uploading the data. They can do anytime. So what is the solution? So there is one solution, possibly rather me keeping the volume as a 10 GB capacity, which is very less capacity. Obviously, right? When users are uploading the data, there will be some issues where as the backend the capacity is not enough. What is the case if I take a volume of 1 TB capacity, 1000 GB is very bigger size, right? Yes, that may work at some extent, but the problem is if you are taking a over provisioning capacity, let's say you are creating a volume of 1000 GB, thinking that the users may uploading so much of data and I should have the capacity. You are paying for 1000 GB, but maybe for some reason the users are not uploading any data. Users are uploading only 100 GB, let's say. Then your actual utilization is 100 GB, but you are paying for 1000 GB capacity to the AWS because you have taken a 1000 GB volume. So that's the problem. That means if you are taking a over provisioned EBS volume, you are paying more as per the need of the business, right? If you are taking a 10 GB, let's say, maybe that is under provisioning, that means there are some space issues are happening because the users are uploading more data. So that is the biggest problem that we see when we are using the EBS volumes to store the static data. When I say static data, the images, videos, files that I wanted to store, right? So that is the problem that we are facing if you store that type of data into the EBS volumes. So what is the solution now? So definitely a EBS volume is not the ideal solution to keep my data. As of today, I have stored the data into the EBS volume only, correct? All of my images are in the EBS volume only. This is not an ideal solution, and I have given you the enough reasons why. This is the time to note that the EBS volumes are not pay as you go services. That means if you have taken a 1000 GB EBS volume, you need to pay for it, whether you are really storing the data or not. You need to pay for it. So the EBS volumes are not pay as you go services. That's the problem. To fix these issues, the problem that we talk about, right? No, to solve this problem, the AWS has introduced one more service called S3. So S3 is the one more beautiful storage solution from the AWS cloud. This is going to solve the problem that we talk about, right? So let me give you the glimpse of this S3 service, guys, to understand why we are using the S3 in AWS. Because as of today, my real-time website is deployed and it is working fine. My users are able to access my website. But now what we are doing is the enhancements. I'm just doing some, beautifications of my deployment to make it more comfortable from the real-time use case. So if I have an application server, I mean to say the web server, right? The web server has an EBS volume to store the data, right? So let me modify this as per our requirement, guys. Maybe where www html is the location, correct? I'm giving a bunch of the background up, right, before I'm introducing the S3 for you, so it will be more comfortable to understand the use cases, right? So I have a server where I have deployed my web server and I have an EBS volume attached to the server. That is where I'm going to store my website related data in the where www html location that is storing into the respective volume. When I say data, guys, it is the code and the data. The data is all about the images, files, and videos that I wanted to serve to the users, correct? So the users are accessing the website, and obviously when the user is using the domain name will be resoluted into the IP through the Route 53 services, right? And that is where the server will be responding back to you. Now let's talk about the problems. These are the three different problems that we identified today. The problem number one, computing resources. Let's say the user is uploading a 10 GB file. The 10 GB file should come to the server. The server should take the 10 GB data and the data should be stored into where www.html location. So to handle this file upload operation, the server has to spend more amount of processor and memory capacity, correct? Obviously, right? Any instruction that has to be done should consume the processor and memory capacity. That is where it is called as a computing resource. So one problem is if you are using the EBS volumes to store this type of a static data, it consume more amount of computing resources to handle the IO, correct? So the second problem is again linking to the first problem, handling the IO. The input and output operations are happening more on the server due to the file upload and download operations, and that is where the server may become busy in handling those things. Now the other problem, estimating the EBS volume size that we talked about, we don't know exactly how much size of the volume has to be given to the server, because if it is a public facing a website, we don't know how much data will be uploading by the users. Under provisioning or provisioning both have their own drawbacks. To solve this problem, we are introducing a S3. S3 is the simple storage service in AWS. In S3, we can simply create a bucket. Bucket is just a folder, nothing else. right? The bucket is just a terminology of the AWS. We can just think of like the bucket is just a folder in the cloud. In this bucket, now I'm going to upload the data. The images, videos, files that I wanted to serve to my users, all of them I'm going to store into the S3 bucket so that the users can access the data, upload the data directly from your S3 bucket. So the request will not go to your server actually. Okay, this is great. So this S3 bucket is called as a object-based storage, whereas the EBS volumes are called as a block storages. The S3 is the object storage. Okay, what is the difference? So when I say the S3 is the object storage where it is not supported for the block type of a storage, that means you can only keep the data which is in the form of a file like image files, videos, PDF, text files, something like that. You cannot do any software installations on this S3 bucket space. That is why it is called as a object base. So that means what? If my website has to work, there are two things that is more important, right? One, the Apache HTTP web server should be installed, right? When the Apache HTTP web server has to be installed and it require a storage capacity where it has to store the software information, right? Like /etc/httpd. So the software installation still be happening on the server side where the software installations are using the root EBS volume to do these installations, and you are keeping the application related code in the server only. The actual data, the static data that you wanted to serve to the end user will be in the S3 bucket. That is how I'm dividing my data into two different places now, guys. Previously I kept my application related code like index.html and the images in the same folder, the var.html. Now what I'm doing, the code will be there on the server side, but the data will be on a S3 bucket, so that I need not to worry about the EBS volume size, as I'm not going to keep any dynamic data. I mean to say any data that is updating by the end user. That is great. So the softwares are installed on the EC2 server and the code is deployed on the EC2 server, but the business specific data will be in a S3 bucket. That is how we are going to plan. So the application specific data, as I said, the images, files and videos will never be in the EC2 server itself. That data will always be in the S3 bucket, guys. Why S3 is more special? Because S3 is the pay as you go service. That means when you are creating a S3 bucket, the S3 bucket will be created with zero size. When you are keeping the data in the bucket, how much data that you are putting into the bucket, you need to pay for the same. If I'm putting some 5 GB capacity data in the bucket, you just pay for 5 GB. If you are keeping 10 GB, pay for 10 GB. Tomorrow you remove another 5 GB data, you pay only for the data that is there in the bucket. That is how S3 is the pay as you go service. That is one advantage. The second advantage is you need not to reserve the capacity, guys. You create a bucket with a zero size. Whenever you are keep on adding the data to the bucket, based on the data, the bucket size will be enlarge or shrink automatically. I would say the bucket will be grow and shrink automatically based on the amount of the data that you are keeping into the bucket. I think that is great, right? Now, if I have a a public facing website where the people are started uploading the data, like the way how you guys are uploading the data to the YouTube. If I'm storing all of the videos that are uploaded by the users into the S3 bucket, I need not to worry about the capacity. Why? The S3 bucket is keep on increasing based on the data that is coming in from the users. If the users are uploading 1000 GB data, my S3 bucket size is 1000 GB. If the users are uploading 2000 GB data, my bucket size is 2000 GB. That is how dynamically it can grow as per the business demand. That is how the AWS will be maintaining in the backend. Well, so then obviously due to these advantages, right, we should be able to use the S3 bucket to store our data, at least the static data. Correct. So then I think let me do some changes to my current deployment. Maybe I don't want to store my images in the server itself. I want to store the images in the S3 bucket. For that, first let me go to the S3 service, guys. This is the third service that I'm introducing for you guys in the AWS. We talk about EC2, we talk about Route 53, now S3. S3 is the service under the storage section. If you go to the S3 service, S3 means simple storage service. This is the S3 dashboard where I can see some buckets are already there. So let it be. Now for my use case to deploy my website, I need a bucket to store the data. So all what you need to do is create a bucket. So create a bucket to store the data. So click on create a bucket and specify the bucket name. Let's say the bucket name is dpt3 web date. The bucket name should be unique, guys. When I say unique, this is unique across the world. No one else in the world should use the same bucket name in the AWS. That is how it is unique. Okay. So if anyone else is using this name, so it will throw you the error. Okay, that's the reason mostly the bucket names will start with the organization name, so that obviously, right, the company name will not be a duplicated mostly, right? So mostly the company name, the project name, and the application name, that is how there will be a specific naming convention will be followed in the real time to frame the bucket names, as these are the unique names across the world. If you take whatever the name you like, it will not allow you to create, right? So dpt3 web data, why this bucket name is unique? If it is unique in your account, this is meaningful, right? But why it is unique across the world? No one else should have the same name in their accounts as well. We'll know the reason after we created this bucket. Okay, as of now, yes, this is the unique name. Let me specify the name. And when you create a bucket and keeping the data should be stored into which region. That is something you need to decide, right? You see, you need to specify the region in which region your data should be stored. So I want to store the data in the US East 1 region. Just specify the region. You see, guys, here there is no option to specify the size, how much size of the bucket has to be created. Why? This is the pay-as-you-go service. You need not to reserve any capacity. This is just a empty bucket that I'm going to create. Then we can start keeping the data. Now, by default, the S3 buckets are created with the private access. You can see here, block all public access. This is by default. If there is a check mark, that means the data that you are uploading to this bucket will not be accessible by the public internet by default. Now we need to take a decision. The data that I'm going to keep in this bucket should be accessible by the public internet or not. Based on the requirement, we need to take a decision. Should we remove this check mark or not? As of now, let me remove this check mark. Let me enable this for public access. We'll talk about the restrictions, the private access later. So now this is done. Acknowledge. Leave the remaining default options as it is. Okay, and the region selection is based on the same discussion what we did in the initial days, based on your data governance, the project rules, which type of data should be stored in where, maybe the latency. The same rules will be applied while you are choosing the region where you wanted to store the data. Now simply create a bucket. Now you see guys, yeah, dpt3 hyphen web data, the bucket is created. Now just click on the bucket name. Now you go inside the bucket, and as of now the bucket is empty bucket. So creating an empty bucket is not cost you anything guys. Why? This is the pay as you go service. If you start uploading the data, then only the billing will happen. Correct. So now there is an option to upload the data. Let's say I wanted to store some images, videos, files that I wanted to show to my end user. So all of the data will be now in the S3 bucket. So let's say I wanted to keep one image. Click on the upload, add files. Maybe I wanted to take one image from my local system, right? So maybe I'll just take this lighthouse. So just upload a image, simply upload. Now I'm uploading a file to the S3 bucket. This is exactly as like a Google Drive. If you guys are using the Google Drive, right, you just create a Google Drive account and start uploading the data. Will you be care about the data is getting stored in which location? No, right? Why? The Google Drive is the a cloud storage solution. You never be worried about your data is getting stored in where. So all that is happening in the backend. You just upload the data, retrieve the data whenever you need. Correct. The same thing here. I'm just uploading the data to my S3 bucket. All what I know is that data must be stored into US East 1 region. But in that region, how exactly AWS is storing my data, we really don't know. We need not to, as per the shared responsibility model. Now you see, I'll just go back to the S3 dashboard, guys, just to know. This is my bucket. If I go to the bucket, now you see there is one file. So the file that you have been uploaded to the S3 bucket is now called as a object. Object is the terminology that we need to use now. So this is the object name, the object type, the object is last uploaded or modified, the object size and other things. So these are the characteristics of an object that is uploaded. Good. Now I have the object here. This object, I mean to say the image should be accessible by the end user, correct? How the people can access this image? If you go inside the object now, so this is the image that I kept into the S3 bucket, and this is important. Every object that I have uploaded to the S3 bucket will have a object URL. Okay, the object URL, if you look in https:// that means the S3 will be allowing to listen on HTTP protocols, and you can see the bucket name dot we can see a S3 service in the Amazon AWS, and you can see the object name, guys. So this is the object URL that you need to use wherever you want to consume this image. Let's say this is the object URL that is giving you or serving you this image. Let me take this object URL and let me go to the browser. Why I'm going to the browser? Because this object URL is using the HTTP protocol. Of course, HTTPS protocol, because this is secured, right? So just hit enter. So you see, by default, the objects that are uploaded to the S3 buckets are private. You cannot access these objects just like that from the public internet using this object URL links. If you have a business requirement where these objects can be accessed from public internet, we need to modify the permissions. As of now, let me make it as a public permission. I mean to say public access, right? So I think there is an option here, make public. Okay, so let me give the public access for now. Anyway, we are going to discuss about the private access best practices later. The goal for now to understand how S3 works. I given the public access for that object. Now you see, guys, I am able to access this particular image from the public internet space. You see, this image is now loading from where, guys? This image is now loading from S3 bucket, not from your EC2 server. Great, right? Previously, when I have access to this particular cloudcourse.com, all of the images that you see in this website are loading from EC2, right? These images are loading from EC2, and we have some concerns with the data, the static data storing into the EC2 in the EBS volume level. Hence the reason I'm planning to store my static data into the S3 bucket, and from the S3 bucket I'm trying to access the data. This is great. The problem is usually the users will not access these images using these direct links, right? The user is all care about, if I go to a cloudcourse.com, I should be able to get a website. The images are coming from EC2, the images are coming from S3, the users will never care about it. So now it's the developer responsibility to write a code accordingly. The code should know exactly the images should be picked up from where. As of now, this particular code is picking the images from local, from the EC2 itself. Now the developer has to change the code accordingly to take all of these images from S3, right? So you as a DevOps engineer responsible to create a S3 bucket and make the adjustment to the permissions of the S3 bucket as per the need, right? And make the bucket is available for the developers. Now it's the developer responsibility how to upload the objects to the bucket and how to get the objects from the bucket to show these to the end users. They will be doing the necessary code changes in their level. Is great. When you guys are working on the S3 as part of the free tier, okay, you will be eligible to store maximum of 5 GB data. So you can keep 5 GB data in the S3 bucket. You don't have any charges. Even to download the data, upload the data, all of them are free for you. So only the main cap that we need to focus is the size. The size should not go beyond 5 GB. So we'll be safe in the free tier limitations. This is cool. Obviously, we will not be keeping 5 GB data, right? It's all about the testing. We will be just adding some images there. Now, maybe I'm interested in doing some modifications to the code so that I wanted to access my website, right? Using my domain name, my images should be loaded from the S3 bucket. So possibly I need to do some changes to the code now. Let me do that, guys. So this is the endpoint where this image is available, right? This is the endpoint. The endpoint is the new terminology. The endpoint in the sense the one which you are using to access the resources. Okay. So this is the endpoint to access this particular image. Now the developer has to include this endpoint in the code. Then the code know from where this image has to be picked up. Correct. Let me try to do some changes, guys, in the code. Of course, even I'm not good in the development side because I'm not the developer, but let me try to do some changes just to understand the things. I'm just opening the existing index.html file. So I'm just uh, I'm just trying to replace any one of the image. Okay, maybe let me replace the image, the logo, guys. Okay, this is the place. You need not to understand the code, guys, but I'm just trying to help you in understanding how the things work. So this is how the HTML code is available. This is where the developer is saying that the logo is the image. Currently it is picking up the logo from the images folder, right? The images folder is available in the server itself. Now I'm saying that no, don't get the image from the EBS, get it from S3. So the developer has to mention the object endpoint in the code. So I'm just doing the changes. So wherever I want to show this image in my website, that is where I'm just replacing it with the S3 endpoint. This is the object URL that I'm keeping in my code. Now the code know that the image has to be picked up from the S3 buckets, not from the EC2. That is how I'm doing the changes in this. Save the code. Now let me refresh the page. Right. So let me refresh the page, guys. This is great. You see here my logo has replaced. Now I'm sure this particular logo is coming in from S3 bucket, guys, not from the EC2, not from the EBS. So this is to prove you guys that we are using the S3 bucket to store the static data like the images, files, and uh, videos, right? So please do confirm, guys, if you are not able to hear me. Thank you. Right. So this is just to prove you guys that the developer know exactly how to use the object URLs uploaded to the S3 in their code. That way, when the end users are accessing this website, they will not know the difference. The images are coming from where. But in this case, this image is coming from S3 bucket, not from the EC2 itself. That is where the change is happening. Same way, all of the images can be put into the S3 bucket and the developer know exactly how they need to do the code changes, right, to pick up the data from the S3. Same way, when the users are uploading the data from this portal, the developer know that the data has to go to S3 and the data should be stored in the S3 bucket. That logic will be done by the developer side. We need not to worry about it. This is cool, right? Now, if I'm keeping all of my data, right, the static data which is in the form of a object in the S3, Now tell me guys in the chat window, do I need to worry about the EBS volume size? No, right? The EBS volume is currently holding what? The EBS volume is holding the code. The code will never be changing, right? The size of the code will never be changing. If it is changing, we know how much that it is changing. So we need not to worry about the EBS volume size estimations now, right? So as I said, your responsibility to create a bucket, make the bucket available. The developer know how to upload the object, how to retrieve the object, how to show the objects uh, in the web portals. You are not uploading the object to the S3 bucket, guys. You are not storing the data in the S3 bucket. The developer code will take care of that. Here I am uploading the data manually to my S3 bucket because I wanted to show you that this image can show in the web portal by doing some changes. But usually you will not be worrying about uploading the data to the S3 or other things. The code will take care of it. Good to know. So here, let's say if I open on this image and if I know uh, do open image in the new tab just to verify the things, and you see in the new tab it automatically picked up that S3 location and it is loading from the S3 only. This is just to confirm you that yes, the images are coming in from the S3 only. Good. So that is where the S3 is more popular, guys, to store the static data. And now we have understood the S3 use cases. Maybe now we need to focus on some scenarios around it. Okay. So maybe I'll talk about one important, the a scenario related to the S3. If I open my S3 bucket, you see that the storage class, currently it is standard. The S3 has multiple storage classes to help you to store the data which of the different categories. The data could be a different type, right? So the different type of the data can be stored into the different storage classes as per the business need. Same thing, your EBS volumes are having multiple types, right? GP2, GP3, IO1, IO2. Why? The each type will have a different billing, different performance and other things. Same way here, the S3 also has a different storage classes, and let me show you the different classes that are available in S3. Maybe properties. Do. Sorry. So I just need to go to the object. In this object, if I go to the properties and we can see the storage class section. Let me go for edit. You can see here there are number of storage classes are available, guys. Okay, whatever the storage class that you take, the concept is same. The only difference is performance will be differ, maybe availability will be differ, the billing will be differ. So what is the business data that you are going to keep here? Based on that, you need to take a decision which storage class will be the ideal for you, right? So at a high level, it states that standard is the storage class name. This is more suitable for frequently accessed data. And there is a one more storage class available here. This is more suitable for the data which is keep on changing. There is one more storage class available which is more suitable for the data which is infrequently accessed data, right? So like that, there are a few other storage classes are there, and we need to understand the data behavior and choose the correct storage class. We will not be involving into this level, guys, to take a decisions, but it's worth it to have at least some basics about the storage classes. That's how I'm going to talk about these things. Maybe this just to give you the heads up that there are multiple S3 storage classes are there. In detail about the differences and which we need to focus here to take a decisions will be discussed in the tomorrow lecture. When you are hosting a dynamic website like a youtube.com, let's say, when the users are uploading the videos, that video will go and sit in S3 bucket. How that will happen? The developer know. So the developer is written the code in such a way that when the file is getting uploaded, the file should go to a S3 bucket. That is how the logic will be done by the developer. We need not to worry about that logic, how that is being implemented at code level. Right? And again, yeah, just to answer the questions that I get it in chat window, right? So here I'm able to access my website. The moment when I access this website, the request will go to the EC2 server on port number 80. The Apache HTTP web server will be responding back with the index.html file that is available in the document root folder. The index.html file has the details, what images should be picked up from where and how to show this. That is where, right? You don't need to do any mapping of the image available in the S3 to the EBS code. That is something done by the developer here, and that is where I done a small change in the index.html. In the index.html, right? So I just have mentioned the object URL. So this is the image that is available on so and so S3 bucket, and take that image and show it to the users. So when this page is loaded, the request go to the S3, pick up the image from S3, and that will be showing to the user. So that is where the mapping will be taken care by the developer, right? And as of now, right, just note that the developer will be writing the entire code. The code will be given to you. You just take the code and put into the right location. If any specific instructions are required, how this code has to be put in, you will be know those instructions from the developer side only. The developer will inform you if any special uh, instructions that you need to follow to keep this code, right? So whatever they ask you to do, just take the code and put it into the right location and make it working. If any code issues, you need not to worry. That has to be go back to the developer only, right? Now we'll talk about the security and permissions lot in the upcoming sessions. Today I made a public access to my S3 bucket, public access to my images, but we can take a call which will be a public, which will be a private based on the business decisions. We need not to be worry about it, but we'll talk about the private access things later when we have the the other dependencies are resolved, right? So I think that's the story for today, guys. And if any questions, please do let me know. I'm sure you have got a good insight about the you know the way how the web services are working in the backend, right? And if you see, right, my delivery today is like a mix of many things, right? I have used the web server concept, the S3 concept, the EBS volume concept, EC2, lot of things. So going forward, all of the services concepts that we talk about will be integrated in, right, in a loosely coupled manner, right, guys? That is how I'm going to make use of the previously discussed topics in a future as well. So if you have a good picture on the previously discussed topics, then the upcoming lectures will be more easy for you guys. Thank you.
I have a question. If your job role entails you setting up the infrastructure and not just deploying the code given from developer, so in this case now we saw you updating the index HTML file and then putting the link to the buckets. So yeah, we know that you've already set up a S3 bucket. So I'm just wondering, like, how do you know what services are required for your code? Like, what sort of infrastructure you need to, like, so for any solution now, you explain why you needed to use an S3 bucket. So if we're working like a real, sorry, if we're working, I'm so sorry, if we're working like in a real time, if we're working in a real time environment, and you need to know like what services you need to provision. Will you just have a discussion with the developer and then ask those questions and then they will let you know what you need to do? Is that how it works? Okay.
So as of now, the answer is right. Going forward in my discussions, you'll know the answers for these questions. But for now, yes, it is a discussion with the developer. Okay, the developer know exactly what is needed for them to run the code, right? As per the discussion with the developer, we will be know exactly what needs to be deployed, what services are required, what applications are required, how to deploy the code, how to run the code. Everything you get it from the developer only. But more details about this we'll be discussing later, as well as when we are moving ahead with the more other applications. As of now, this is very basic, just to understand the web infrastructure.
Hi, Pia.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, please. I will ask the question later. Somebody is trying to ask.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So hi, Pierre, when we mounted that var www.html folder on a new file system, right? So if we keep some data on that, will that space be added on the root partition as well?
No, right? Any data that you keep in the var www.html location, that will be eating the space only from the xvdf volume.
Okay, if we unmount that, then again that data will
Correct.
go to the root, right? Then that space will... Okay, yeah, thank you.
And now I think let me backtrack here, guys. If you look into this endpoint, guys, now tell me, in this endpoint, this is the object that I wanted to access. This object is come from this bucket. So now tell me, this is the public facing object URL, right? Now this is the reason why your bucket name should be unique across the globe. Why? Your object URLs are framed as like the bucket name is included in the URL and the object name. So this bucket name should not be duplicated. So I don't want any other customer using the same bucket name. Why? Then there is a confusion. This image should get it from which bucket if there are two buckets with the same name in the globe, correct? So that is the main reason why your bucket names are unique across the globe. So I think this is the answer for the question that I get it with from Prasad. Thank you.
Hello, Pierre.
Yes,
I have a question regarding yesterday's lecture. I have one domain which was hosted in GoDaddy, and then I have created the in Route 53 DNS management. I created the new hosted zone, and then I copied the DNS server names to the GoDaddy, but still it is, keep on saying the page not found. What went wrong exactly? Like I copied the total DNS 4 names in GoDaddy DNS server.
Well, so after you have added the name server into the GoDaddy, have you created a record in the hosted zone?
Yes, I did.
So www dot usually, right, when you have updated the name server in the GoDaddy, GoDaddy may take maximum of 24 hours to make it reflected. Minimum could be any, The minimum could be
I
even
see.
5 minutes, but maximum it will take 24 hours to make it happen. The moment when the name servers are updated properly, you will be getting the email notification from the GoDaddy when it is successful. After that, only the routing will happen to the AWS. Until then, it is still a GoDaddy.
Okay, my question is, whenever we created a hosted zone, and then I have given the domain name without www, and then a record needs to be created with the www or without www.
Anything is fine. It's all up to you how you
Anything.
wanted to access your website. Let's say if you have an AA record with www, then you can access the website using www. If you don't have an AA record with www, let's say without www you have created a AA record, then you can access the website as just cloudcourse.com. You cannot use
Yes.
www here. That is only the
Oh,
reason.
but
So
the created host zone and a record must be the same, right?
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, so if you have created a record without www like that, then this is called
Yes.
as a naked domain. This is called as a naked domain because there is no a resource name here. So this is the naked
Yes.
domain. Both will work.
Naked. Okay. But created hosted zone and a record must be the same. So one is not www and one is without www. It won't work. It must be
Correct.
the same, right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Pierre.
Thank you.
Yes, is there any limitation how long this bucket will be increased dynamically when there is incoming data in there?
AWS says theoretically there is no limit. Right.
with
So
one
if I
bucket,
go to the correct, if I
with
go to
one
the
bucket we
AWS
can
documentation, correct,
okay.
that's true. That's true. As per AWS, there is no limit on the S3 bucket, how much it can grow. Um, individual Amazon S3, no, this is not the bucket limit. This is the object limit. Okay, a single object can go, maximum of 5 TB size. The single file can have 5 TB size of the file. The bucket size, I'm sure there is no limit from AWS side. They keep on growing the bucket size as and when it require.
Yeah, hi Priya, hello.
Hi.
My question is regarding can we change the root file server while uploading the code, or we have to upload in the same?
No, so what does it mean by root file server? The terminology is little confusing to me.
Like we are uploading in index.html or where
So
www.
this is the default document root folder where your code supposed to be. Your question is, can we change this location, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, obviously, right? That is where I have shown you. So any tweakings that you need to do, right? Every application will have the configuration file. In this case, httpd.conf is the configuration file where you need to do the customization. So in this configuration file, right, by default, okay, by default, where www.html is the default location. If you want to change, we need to change that location here. In this file, we need to change to a different location and save it and restart your service. Then we can keep the code into the other location, not a problem. This is where we need to change the location if you want it.
And what is the index.html? It's a folder within
That is the
This
file,
folder.
right? The index.html is the file where it is including the HTML code inside this location. This is the folder. In this folder, the index.html is the file name. The file, it
Okay.
includes the code.
Hey Pierre, quick question here. I mean, like you were mapping that Lighthouse image on S3 bucket and you were able to see that on the website, right? Kind of missed that. I mean, if you can quickly show me how you did that.
So in the var.html, I have the code, right? So in the index.html file, this is where the developers are writing the code. In this file, okay, in this file, the developer is actually mentioning from where the images has to be picked up. You see, somewhere in the code, I'm mentioning that the image should be get it from the S3. You see here, I have mentioned that the lighthouse.jpg file should be get it from the S3 service from so-and-so bucket. This is the object URL that I'm keeping in the code somewhere, and that is how when this code runs, right? So the request go to the S3 to get this image. That image will be displayed in the website. How it has to be displayed, where it has to be displayed, that is something the developers took care of it here.
Okay, so basically, S3 bucket, in the S3 bucket, they would upload the images. They would just upload the images and give the link here in the code.
Exactly, exactly. So here I'm
Cool.
showing manually. I uploaded a image to the S3, and that link I have given in the code. I did it
Oh, okay.
manually. The developer
Uh-huh.
know exactly how to do this tweaking. They have their own code logic, right, to upload the data, get that object URL, no, keep that object URL in the code. All those things will happen in the code level itself. They know how to make the things happen. Here I have
Okay,
done
cool,
this
Pierre.
manually
Yeah.
just to show you our understanding exactly how it works. But we need not to be very
Mm-hmm.
100% clear on this because we are not a developer. Need not to be get into that code level,
Awesome. Thank you.
right?
So just
So
S3
answering
bucket
to,
will be
go ahead, Chiraj.
S3 bucket will be created by developers then.
It's a case-to-case basis. Sometimes it will be created by them. Sometimes you will be creating based on the use case, based on the requirement, right? They will decide who will be the owner of the bucket. Sometimes the developer will be creating the bucket by themselves. They will be the owner. Sometimes we will be creating the bucket and we will be the owner. So based on the requirement, we'll be doing that. We'll know all those, the upcoming lectures, how come the different buckets will be created by the different people in which situations, right? So answering to Sujit, right, that is something will be covered later. Okay, so the data that you talk about like comments and all, the sign in operation, right, mostly that data will not be in S3. That will go to the database. That I'll talk about that section in a different sessions.
Hi, Pierre. I have a question like we are using S3 bucket. So in S3 bucket, the data was storing. So in internally, which technique it was used to fetch the data, either queues or stacks?
Mm-hmm. There is no concept of the QR stack, something like that. Okay, so if the data is there in the S3 bucket, you are specifically mentioning, right, which file that you wanted to pick up, right? So where it is. So when you are, every object has its own object URL, right? So the object URL will tell you exactly which image that you wanted to pick up. There is nothing like a first in, first out, last in, first out, or queue concept, nothing like that, right? So you are uploading some data to the S3 bucket and you are getting the data whenever you need it, and you are mentioning exactly which file you wanted to get.
Yeah, but bucket contains only one input and one output, right? So how can it was taking based on that URL?
What does it mean by one input and one output?
Because bucket contains a shape like only one input, right? So since
Yeah.
we have used
What
the
is
name,
the
so
meaning of one input to the bucket?
like storing the value into it. So there are lot of data will be there. So how it will store into the bucket. Then how it will come out based on what in any index, or you said it was URL. So how come it will come out? It will
I
push the
think
data.
mhm. I think you are from the database background. That's why you are using the database terminology here. So the S3 bucket is just like a Google Drive. Let's talk about the Google Drive now. If you have a Google Drive, you start uploading a number of files. You have some 100 files in your Google Drive. How you retrieve the data, download the data? You go to the Google Drive, select the file that you wanted and download it, right? So what is the concept of here? The stacks, queues, index and all. There is no index created here. This is not the database. This is just a storage capacity. So for this specific bucket, currently I have one file and I can add a number of files, right? I can add thousands of files can be put into a single bucket, right? So now I'm uploading a one more file to the same S3 bucket. Now the each and every object or the file that is uploaded will have their own object URL. So which file you wanted to access, the every file has their own object URL. That is the one which you need to use to get it.
Okay, thank you.
Here I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, here we are using object URL in the source code, right? See, maybe we are making it as a public. Maybe other people also, there are chances to use the same URL, right? So how we are encrypting and how we are giving this like as a masked URL or something?
Yeah, that is what I said that we'll talk about the permissions, the private access, other scenarios in the later scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Do we need to create in the same availability zone where the EC2 instance is located
Need not to
in
be,
the S3
okay?
bucket?
Even if you look at the S3 bucket, when you are creating a S3 bucket, you can only choose the region. You don't have a facility to choose the availability zone. Okay, so you can only choose the zone, sorry, the region here. You don't have an option to choose the availability zone for your S3 bucket. So your best S3 bucket could be in the same region, could be in the different region, could be in the same availability zone. We don't care about it. Why? The object that you are uploading to the S3 bucket will have a object URL. This object URL is the HTML endpoint and it will be accessible. That's it. So it can be anywhere. Well, I think great guys. We had a good time today. So let's meet tomorrow. We'll talk about the new story. Thank you for your time.
Pierre, sorry to break you. One quick question here. So regarding the S3, like, all these images and whatever dependencies that goes along with the developer's code, right? Is this being automated or is it being manually added? Like
It
how
is
it is done
automated.
there?
That's what it is
It is
automated.
automated.
Okay. So when you are
Okay.
uploading a file from the website, right? You go to the website, you upload a file. The file go to
Mm-hmm.
S3. How that will
Mm-hmm.
happen? The developer know. The developer is writing the code accordingly to take your data and put it into the S3. When you are downloading the file, let's say, it has to come from S3, and the developer know how exactly the code has to be written for that. So
Okay. So we
everything
do
is
not have to worry
automated.
so much about it.
No, because that is something related to the developer, and they know how to
Okay.
write the code for that. We don't worry about how exactly that logic works.
So DevOps need don't have to worry so much about S3 concepts, or do we need to know? end to end?
We'll talk about, right? So as of
Oh,
now, the
awesome.
S3
Sure.
bucket use cases, right? So we'll talk about S3 versioning, S3 storage classes, S3 permissions. So we'll talk about those. Anything, something related to the AWS side configuration, right? That is something we need to be worry about it. Inside the bucket, what data is coming in, how the data is going out, we don't need to worry. But configuring the bucket in a best practices manner using the AWS concepts, right? That is something you should be familiar.
Sure. Thanks, PR. Yeah, thanks for that.
Thank you.